Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll find unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download, including my newest and greatest release, NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction. They make great $10 Christmas gifts. You just click on Amazon. What is today, the 19th? You'll have it before the 25th. It's a great gift. You throw it under the tree or in a stocking stuffer. So before we get to this week's story, I'm going to read you the true crime section of the New York Post. A Virginia man has died after a bear in a tree shot by one of his hunting partners fell on him, state wildlife officials said. A hunting group was following the bear when it ran up the tree as one of the hunters shot the bear. The animal fell onto the hunter, who was standing about 10 feet below the bottom of the tree. Lester C. Harvey, 58 years old, of Phoenix, Virginia, was later pronounced dead at the hospital. I have absolutely nothing against hunting. A lot of the guys I worked with in the NYPD were hunters. Every year they made a pilgrimage to upstate New York, and they would hunt deer and 6-point buck, 8-point buck. I know nothing about hunting. I love venison, so I always thought that was great when they take down a deer and then bring the meat back to work. But I got nothing against hunting, but can you eat bear meat? I don't know. And even if you do kill a bear, like, what's the price to get one of those things taxidermed? It just seems to me like a big hassle, but I guess it's the thrill of it. I don't know. Not my idea of fun. The wife of former NYPD intern commissioner Tom Donlin found herself on the opposite side of the law Monday night after allegedly driving with an out-of-state insurance in Manhattan, according to sources. Deirdre O'Connor, 62 years old, was arrested and issued a summons for lapsed insurance after she was involved in a 3-vehicle collision near the corner of East 53rd Street and 1st Avenue. O'Connor was driving a 2019 white Honda CR-V northbound on 1st Avenue when she was rear-ended by another car, which fled, police sources said. O'Connor was arrested at the site of the crash over insurance issue and was brought to the 17th precinct, where she was issued a summons and released. Well, that doesn't really sound like an arrest. The force pushed her car into the back of a 2020 Toyota Sienna Uber, which was transporting a 46-year-old man in a motorized wheelchair. The man suffered back and neck injuries in the crash and was brought to NYU Langone Hospital in stable condition. And now he's going to sue. You know, now they're arresting people without insurance. I thought you got these migrant gangs running around robbing people and they're worried about insurance cards. I think the NYPD has bigger fish to fry. But right now, the New York City has become a clown show. I think it's weird that the former police commissioner's wife doesn't have insurance in her car, but it sounds like she had out-of-state insurance. She probably moved here. There was an issue. But what's the world coming to? And now, just before I went live with this, there's a story that, I don't know if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago during the New York City Marathon. This guy, Tom Donlin, the police commissioner, got into like almost a fist fight with an NYPD official over who was going to be in the photo. Supposedly, one of the people involved in that ruckus ordered this guy's wife to be brought to the precinct. When they say arrested, she probably was issued a C summonses, which is returnable to criminal court. I never remember locking somebody up for not having insurance. We just used to take their car in the old days. So this story really got me going. The NYPD's highest paid employee, who shoveled more than $400,000 last year, filed for retirement last week when she was suspended amid internal affairs probe for her astronomical overtime, the Post has learned. Quathisha Epps, common spelling, will retire just shy of 20 years with the department, sources said, an exit that will impact her pension. Yeah, you think so? Leaving money on the table is seemingly uncharacteristic for Epps, who raised eyebrows by pulling in roughly more than $204,000 in overtime last year from her administrative job in the NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry's office, payroll records show. Sources told the Post that Epps' whopping overtime was capped after the Post's exclusive report last month on her pay. Someone blew the whistle. She was also told to be put back on patrol, an apparently unappetizing prospect after her cushy desk job, according to sources. There's no way she's going to go back out on patrol, one source told the Post. No kid. There's so many things that pisses me off about this story. First of all, I'm guessing she hasn't seen the street in years. And the people running one police plaza always have and always will have some set of balls. They really do. You've got a female lieutenant working for the chief of patrol's office, or one of the chief's office, all right? First of all, she's not making just lieutenant's pay. I can almost guarantee you she's making specialty pay or commander's pay, whatever they want to call it. So if you're in a specialized unit and doing an exceptional job, so say you're a sergeant in Bronx homicide and you're doing a terrific bang-up job and you're clearing all these homicides and you're overseeing these crack investigators that are doing God's work, they'll give you specialty pay as a sergeant, which means you're making lieutenant's pay. And if you're a lieutenant and they give you the specialty pay, you're making captain's pay. So she's probably already on a multiplier making good money. And now she's making this kind of overtime, which I was looking at the numbers. I don't want to bore you. But it just, to me, doesn't seem humanly possible to make that kind of overtime from a desk position. She would have to be sleeping in her office at one police plaza. And this is what really irks me. When I was retiring, like my last 2 years when I was in the auto crime division, everybody in OCCB, especially auto crime, we had a 40-hour-a-month cap. So they didn't want to hear, I came up with a search warrant at the end of the month and I had 38 hours overtime. They would tell me, my commanding officer was, the cap is the cap is the cap is the cap. That was his expression. And if you went over that 40 hours, that you were expected to take it in comprehensive time. So you would take it, it would build up like your time off. And I had a really good sergeant, and I really didn't want to push the envelope because then it would backfire on him, because guess what? Here I come in with 50, 60 hours overtime, and then they're going to pull him aside and they're going to start breaking his balls, and I really didn't want to suck him into it. But that's amazing that someone working at one police plaza who probably isn't leaving the building except to go to luncheons and meetings. She's not out there supervising search warrants or sitting in a car following dangerous homicide suspects. It's just so hypocritical of the NYPD, but that's what happens. And she's going to try to sneak out the door. That's why she's retiring, because of this probe, because probably they're going to start looking into this. What they're going to do is they're going to check her overtime slips against when she signed in and when she signed out. So, and when you're doing it, if she says she's putting in these hours for the last year, you're going to make a mistake doing something like this. Like, you can cover your tracks for only so long, but if she's using a car going back and forth, there's toll records on that. If she was at this meeting, there's travel time. It's going to be fairly easy for internal affairs, depending on if they're letting the dogs go on her or they're holding them back, basically saying, she's going to retire. Let's just put this to rest with her. It depends. If the Post keeps writing articles about it, and especially what's going on in Eric Adams' backyard, and I don't know the relationship Mayor Eric Adams has with this Chief Jeffrey Madry, who knows? They might let her swing in the wind. She might lose her pension. But it looks like now she's going to retire early with this investigation pending, hoping she can just collect what's left of her pension and whatever she's accumulated. But who knows? But it's just so hypocritical. Now, this story is wild. A New York financial consultant and son of a Florida judge allegedly barged into the office of an Upper East Side optometrist, knocked him out cold, then fled to New Jersey, where he sucker punched two other healthcare workers, breaking one's jaw and nose. Dr. Ronald Goldstein, 63 years old, not only suffered a bloody head injury requiring 8 stitches, but is dismayed that detectives classified the attack as a misdemeanor, a decision critics call an attempt to keep NYPD's crime numbers down. The NYPD never arrested the disturbed suspect, who was identified to swift actions by Goldstein's staff and daughter. After the 1:30 attack on Goldstein, Eric Moneyham made a beeline to Bergen County, New Jersey, which is just over the George Washington Bridge, where he broke into the house of a Wyckoff Township, into a house in Wyckoff Township at about 4 p.m., police said. He also posted a message on LinkedIn threatening the resident. Moneyham landed in the Bergen County Jail on October 20th while undergoing an exam at the Lockoff's Medical Center in Paramus, where he sucker punched a staffer, knocking her to the ground and pounded him more than 40 times, breaking his jaw and nose, a criminal complaint said, charging him with the aggravated assault. 5 days later, he allegedly punched a female doctor in the face and was charged with another count of aggravated assault. Moneyham, calling him a person of interest to bring him back to New York City for arrest in the Goldstein assault, which cops originally classified as a felony. but downgraded to a misdemeanor. So where do I begin with this? Obviously, this guy is mentally ill and out of control. He's running around beating up everybody he can get his hands on. And here we go again with the NYPD reclassifying a felony case to a misdemeanor so the precinct commander and the detective squad commanders' crime statistics don't go up. No matter how you slice it, 8 stitches is a felony, and they won't put a detainer on this guy who's in New Jersey charged with a crime. And I'm sure this eye doctor has medical bills. I'm sure this eye doctor has medical bills and is going to sue this guy, but he's going to go into court with a misdemeanor complaint. That makes it look like he was bitch slapped over a dispute, not seriously injured. And that, folks, is how police departments can brag about how violent crime is in your area, because they just reclassify it or don't do anything about it. And it's not just the NYPD doing this, but they started doing this nonsense with CompStat because these commanding officers would get called into these abuse sessions and what are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? So if they pretend the crime isn't there and don't report it or knock it down to a misdemeanor, it doesn't show up in CompStat and they look like heroes. Meanwhile, you got victims out there that are having all sorts of problems with this. I remember in the 4-1 specifically, the 4-1 commanding officer, the 4-1 precinct has like these little train yards in Hunts Point that bring produce to the Hunts Point market. And you get a lot of these train car burglaries, which is a felony. So you had a couple of these box cars that were broken into, maybe $100,000 worth of stuff was missing. The company makes a complaint with their insurance company. The insurance company goes and pulls the 61 because someone made a complaint, and you got the commanding officer making it into a misdemeanor. So there was some heads rolled over that one, but it still doesn't stop these guys from doing it. This story is wild. A Google Street View camera caught the image of a suspect allegedly loading a corpse into his car in Spain, leading to his arrest in a chilling murder and dismemberment charge, according to a report. A car shooting the 360-degree map footage happened to be passing through a tiny town in Soria in October 2023 when it caught the disturbing sight. The image shows the 48-year-old suspect bending over and stuffing a large object wrapped in white plastic into the trunk of his burgundy-colored sedan, which is parked on the side of a sleepy street. Police believe the object was the body of George Luis Perez, 32 years old, who was later found dismembered in a cemetery in the nearby town of Andaluz, according to the report. Big Brother is watching. I don't know if I told this story before, but I was in a precinct once, and there was a sergeant there, and my sergeant knew the guy and just kind of gave him a half a hello. And I says, what's up with that guy? And he goes, I'll tell you later. So later on, what's up with that guy? And he says, he moved a dead body and got away with it. And I go, what are you talking about? Well, the story goes like this. This guy gets a call from his cousin, and he says, hey, I need you to help me move some stuff out of my apartment. The sergeant goes there. There's a carpet rolled up. He takes this heavy-duty carpet down to a van and puts it in the van, never once asking, why is this carpet so heavy? Then they go out to New Jersey, which is odd, and they dump it in a vacant lot. And according to this sergeant, he didn't think nothing of it until a couple of days later when he sees on the news there's a dead body found in this vacant lot, and he goes, wow, that looks like the lot I was near, and hey, that looks like the carpet. So he winds up calling 911. The Jersey cops land on him. They tell Internal Affairs. I don't know what happened to it, but I know he got promoted sergeant, and he was. I don't want to say where he was working, but anyway, Big Brother is watching, so don't dump any dead bodies anywhere. And if you Google that story in the New York Post, it actually shows the photo of the guy putting something into the trunk of the car, which is wild. So anyway, Christmas is coming, and I keep harping on guys, don't drink and girls, don't drink and drive because it can ruin your life. And I want to tell 2 stories about 2 people that I know that I was actually kind of close with, especially one guy where drinking and driving changed their lives. The first one was this guy came on the job with me, great cop, super active, worked in a couple of different places before becoming a detective. Just the job was his life. He was, I think he got grade, he got promoted. Just a really sharp cop. I actually, his family actually lived in the precinct I worked in, and I actually handled a burglary call where his parents were the super of the building, and we got called on a burglary call. The burglar took off, and I threw his sister in the car to canvass the area, and the burglar punched his sister in the face, and she fought the guy. And I don't know if we never caught the guy, but I was just close with him. And later on in my career, I was retiring, and I ran into him. And he was in a specialized unit. And I says, you getting out? No, what are you kidding? I got to take home car and, I'm making overtime. And I said, listen, I said, you're active. I said, why don't you just pack it in? 20 years, enough. No, I'm going to hang it. I'm going to stick it out a little bit. No one's breaking my balls. And, I'm not one to preach. I said, okay. So I retire. And a couple of years later, he gets involved in an accident. He's got a Category 1 or Category 2 car, which is a take-home car. And he's coming home one night. He stopped at a bar, had a couple of cocktails, looking for a parking spot in his neighborhood. It's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And this woman who's collecting bottles and cans, before the sun comes up, steps out, if I'm getting the story right, steps out between two parked cars and he hits her. And he kills her. She was an elderly woman. So he stops. He calls 911, he didn't take off or anything. Cops show up. Sergeant shows up, finds him unfit for duty. The duty captain comes, suspends him on the spot. I guess they took him to highway. He was tested, found later to be drunk. And, the case languished in court. And eventually he wound up doing a couple of years. And, people think that, cops don't, get away with all these things. They don't. And he wound up doing 4, 5, 6 years for, I think it was DUI manslaughter. So I haven't spoken to him before or since. I mean, maybe at one point I'll reconnect with him. But, really good guy who made a mistake and he paid for it. He gave a chunk of his life to go, and prison is not the place a cop wants to go. So, again, I hope he's turned his life around. I know he's out of jail. Again, I might connect with him at some point. The second story is even sadder. So early in my career, I'm working in this place. I think I've explained it, where it was all these old timers and they weren't very nice to the rookies. And I got out of work late one night. It was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm on my way home and I went through a red light and I get pulled over in the midnight by these 247 cops. And, I'm a rookie. They walk up to the car, and I says, I'm really sorry. I hand them my police ID and my license and registration. They go, oh, where do you work? And I tell them I work upstairs. Oh, all right. We've seen you around. We don't know you, blah, 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 blah. How do you like it up there? And, making small talk with these two guys. So he hands me back my paperwork. He goes, all right, take care. Him and his partner get in the police car, and then they drive off. So I'm putting everything back into my wallet and stuff, and then all of a sudden behind me, maybe, 100 yards behind me, I see headlights come on, and this car pulls out of a parking spot, and a car drives by really slow. It's a Crown, I think it was a Chevy Caprice, unmarked brown Chevy Caprice, drives by, and who do I see in the car by himself is the 4-7 Integrity Control Officer. And Integrity Control Officer, his job is to monitor police corruption at the precinct level. So it was obvious to me he's following these two cops around in the midnight. So then, I was like, oh, shit, now I'm a rookie. I don't know anything. And I'm like, well, maybe, should I say anything? Should I just keep my mouth shut? I'm on probation. What should I do? And I thought about it. And I said, I'm going to warn these two guys. So I don't know. A couple of days later, I find them in the locker room. And I says, listen, can I talk to you guys? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I said, listen, you're getting followed by your ICO. And I explained it to them. And they start laughing. They go, yeah, because we lead the precinct in overtime, and he's looking to bust our balls. Don't worry about it. So that, with this guy, Richie, it formed a friendship. And we kept in touch. I would see him at court. He made a lot of arrests. And from that incident, we had a friendship. And we worked. And then later on, I worked in the 5-0. He worked in the 4-7. So the sister precincts, they border up against each other. So it's probably about 1993, 92, 93. I'm in the plainclothes unit, anti-crime, and I stopped this guy driving a tag job. He's driving, I think it was a Buick Regal with a changed vehicle identification number. So I get the real number, I run, and it comes back stolen. And the guy is like, listen, I could take you right now where I bought this car. And the guy knew he was driving a stolen car. He goes, it's on 233rd Street off of Carpenter Avenue, right next to the hospital. He goes, it's a gas station. He goes, it was a regular gas station, but then these guys took it over. They're not selling gasoline anymore. There's like a 3-bay garage in the back. They're bringing in stolen cars, and they're changing the VIN numbers, and they're selling them for a couple of $1,000s. I says, okay. I says, we'll see what we can do. So I run up to my sergeant and I'm like, come on, let's go. And he goes, what do you want to do? I says, let's go over to the 4-7 and hit this place. And my sergeant goes, just sit down and relax. I'm like, no, I'm a kid, and I'm 23. I don't know how the world works, or especially how the NYPD works. I'm like, no, come on, let's go over there and lock these guys up, right? So he's like, just sit down and take it easy. He goes, we can't do that. And I said, why? He goes, well, first of all, he says, if we're going to go into another precinct and lock these guys up. He says, it's going to set off bells and whistles. And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, first of all, you're going to be blindsiding the commanding officer of the 4-7 precinct. He's going to be pissed off that he had a chop shop operating under his nose and no one told him. He goes, second of all, the borough's going to get pissed off that you made an arrest in the next precinct. He says, you got two things you can do. He goes, you can either give this to the auto crime division or call somebody you know in the 4-7 and pass it along. He goes, you want to work in the auto crime division eventually one day, right? I said, yeah. He goes, doing this, he goes, you're going to make a problem for yourself. I said, all right. Who do I call? Richie. So I call my buddy up, Richie, and I tell him, I'll never forget, it was a Friday night. I called him at the precinct. I was home, and I laid out everything that was going on. So a couple of days later, he calls me up. He goes, oh, my God, thank you so much. I go, what'd you get? He goes, oh, like 3-4 stolen cars, 3-4 guys were working and they're changing VIN numbers. Thank you so much. We hit the mother load. We got VIN kits, which are titles and VIN numbers. And he said, we made a lot of overtime. Thank you so much. And I was like, oh, no problem, dude. And we would run into each other all the time. We would run into each other in the bars or working details and stuff. And he was a great guy, but he liked his cocktails, maybe a bit too much. And he wound up getting promoted as sergeant. I was in the borough auto loss in the unit a couple of years later. And I'll never forget this. I don't know what time of year it was, but we're turning out for roll call. The sergeant goes through everything, and then our lieutenant stepped up to the podium, so we knew there was something more to what they were going to tell us at roll call. And he goes, sit down, guys. And he starts going into drinking and driving, and, cops aren't immune to it, and cops can get suspended, cops can lose their jobs, cops can lose their lives. I'm like, where's he going with this? And he goes, last night a sergeant from the 4-2 precinct went to the NYPD communion breakfast, and on his way home, he died in a car accident at West 233rd Street and Webster Avenue. He says he was driving on the service road, which those of you that know the Bronx, Webster Avenue parallels the Bronx River Parkway. So you got the Bronx River Parkway to the right, and then above it is Woodlawn Cemetery. And somebody had parked an 18-wheeler, had left the cab of an 18-wheeler there, and my buddy was driving, obviously probably had too much to drink, and slammed into the back of it, and it killed him. So I says, does anybody know the song? I knew instantly. I just knew it, and I said, does anybody know his name? And they're like, no. So I made a couple of calls, and they said, yeah, it was Richie. So I said, oh shit. So I felt terrible. I just lost my friend. So my partner and I drove up to 233rd and Webster just to see the accident scene, and except for the there was some broken glass and plastic that was left behind, and there was a sheen of antifreeze that leaked out of the car. And I'm just standing there, and I'm saying to myself, how ironic is this? Like, this is literally 2 blocks away from that chop shop. Right on the other side of the Bronx River was the chop shop that I gave this guy. So I told my buddy, I says, listen, if you don't mind, let's just take a ride over the 4-7. I want to see what the car looked like. So we go over the 4-7, and that's ironic because that's the precinct he worked in. And across the street from the precinct down the block, they had like a vacant lot where they would store cars that came in, impounded vehicles before the property clerk got around to taking them out to the pound. And there was his Honda Accord, and it was crushed in the front, and he pretty much died instantly. So, that changed my life in that I said, drinking and driving and bad things can happen to good people. And I'm not absolving cops from drinking and driving. It happens to everybody. But again, the holidays are coming, and those are 2 lives that were impacted by drinking and driving. So, if 2 people listening to this, get this in their head when they're out this weekend or whatever, and call an Uber, I've done my job. So, I hate to harp on this and stuff, but again, these things happen, and I'll have something more uplifting just before Christmas, so I apologize that. So as always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially our listeners in Dublin, Ireland, Omaha, Nebraska, Reno, Nevada, Pickering, Ontario, Norton, Massachusetts, Dripping Springs, Texas, and of course, Seamus and the lads at the Friendly Sons of the Shillelagh in Belmont, New Jersey. If you work in law enforcement and have an interesting criminal background, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram if you'd like to be a guest on the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like or subscribe button. If you enjoyed the content, please go to my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic, for I like to call, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free, including NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction. Thanks again, and I'll have another episode out before Christmas, and have a great weekend, everybody.